Case number 42. Butler versus Torres. Judge looks at both of them. She says she has read the complaint and the answer. She says this was a long and unstable relationship. They lived together, separated, and got back together many times. She asks if they have children. Butler says yes, 3 children. Judge says the relationship ended after an assault. She says Butler claims Torres injured her and destroyed her property. Torres says he does not agree about the property. Judge asks him directly if he assaulted her. He says yes. Judge says this case is also in criminal court. She asks if he has been convicted. He says not yet. She asks if he entered a no-contest plea. He says yes. Judge explains that a no-contest plea means he accepted guilt. She asks about his sentence. He says 180 days in jail and probation. Judge confirms he will serve 180 days. Then she turns to Butler. She asks how long they lived together. Butler says about 1 year. They lived together with their children in a rented house. Butler says everything changed in April. She says Torres came home and told her to leave the same day. She says he threw paint on her couch and ruined her clothes. Judge checks the police report. She asks how much damage Butler is claiming. Butler says $1,500. Torres says the paint spill was an accident. He says they were moving furniture and the paint fell. Butler says he threw her clothes into the paint. Torres says he was trying to clean it. Judge says Butler wrote in her complaint that the spill was an accident. Butler agrees. She says he used her new clothes to clean the paint. Judge says they will stick to facts. She asks what the argument was about. Torres says he thought Butler was using drugs. Judge asks why he thought that. He says she had a habit of smoking marijuana. Judge asks if he also used drugs. He says yes. They both used marijuana. Judge asks where the children were during this. Torres says they were not around. Judge asks Butler if she ever used drugs while the children were in the house. Butler says no. Torres says that is not true. Judge sees a pattern: arguments, drugs, and children involved. She asked why Butler went back to him after everything. Butler says because he said he loved her. She says he lost his job and came back crying. He promised to change. Judge says he begged her to take him back. Butler says yes. Judge says that was a foolish decision. Butler says she lost her home and her credit. She says she and her children are now homeless. Judge says this is not only about her, it is about her children. Judge moves to the assault. She asks if the assault happened in the new house. Butler says yes. Torres says she stayed there about 3 weeks. Judge asks for the photos. Butler gives the photos and the police report. Judge looks at Torres. She asks him why he assaulted her. Torres says she was violent first. He says earlier that day they were fighting. He says she hit him, scratched him, and tore his shirt. Butler says that is not true. Torres says he left the house. He says he came back around 10:30 at night. He says the fight started again. Judge asks who started it. Torres says Butler did. Judge turns to Butler. She tells her side. She says she was lying on the bed with the children. She says Torres came in angry. She says he shouted at the children to get out. She says she told him not to speak to her kids like that. She says he came closer and sat on the bed. She says he grabbed her leg hard. She says she slapped him and asked what his problem was. She says after that he attacked her. She says he hit her many times with a closed fist. She says she was hit again and again. She says she had injuries all over her head. She says she had to be taken away in an ambulance. Torres says that is not true. He says she knows the truth. Then he changes his tone. He admits he made a mistake. He says hitting her was the worst mistake of his life. He says he's sorry. Judge looks at him. She asks if he injured her. He says yes. Butler says it was not only her. She says her children are affected. She says they have nightmares. Judge listens carefully. Then she speaks to Butler. She says she feels most sorry for the children. She says Butler kept putting her children in a bad situation. She says the children were moved back and forth many times. She says Butler allowed this to continue. Butler says she just wants to fix things now. Torres interrupts. He says after the incident, Butler came back to his house. He says she came back 3 times. He says they had contact again. Judge stops him. She asks Butler directly if that is true. Butler says no. Torres insists it is true. They start arguing again. Judge raises her voice. She tells them to stop. She tells Butler she has a bigger responsibility. She says her first duty is to her children. She says Butler did not put her children first. She says she made poor decisions. She says choosing a partner like this affects the children. Butler listens quietly. Judge turns to Torres. She says there is no doubt he assaulted her. She says the photos clearly show serious injuries. She says the criminal court will handle that part. But she says here is also civil responsibility. She says he is responsible for the harm he caused. She also mentions the property damage. She says he likely caused some damage while cleaning the paint. But she says that is not the main issue. She says the real issue is the assault. She says both of them are responsible for the situation around the children. She tells them to end the relationship completely. She says this relationship is harmful. She says it will not help either of them and it will harm the children even more. Judge makes one final point. She says she does not believe them about the drugs. She says first they said the children were not there. Then they said it was in the garage. She says she does not believe they kept drugs away from the children. He says children learn from what they see. She says this behavior will damage their future. She tells Butler to stop this lifestyle. Butler says she will. Judge gives her final decision. She says Torres is responsible for civil damages. She awards Butler $2,500 for the assault. She ends the case. Case closed. Next case is called Gonzalez versus Henderson. Judge looks at both of them. She says she has read the complaint and the answer. She starts summarizing the situation. She says they were in a relationship. It was unstable and sometimes violent. Gonzalez says yes. Judge continues. She says they moved between relatives' homes. At some point they ended up living in a car. She confirms the car, a 1970 Ford Mustang. Gonzalez says yes. Judge says they had a fight in that car. After that they separated. Then something unusual happened. Gonzalez says Henderson sold her the car for $1,500. Later, she says he came back and took the car from her sister's house. Judge focuses on one question. Why were you living in a car? Gonzalez explains. She says she was staying with her sister. Henderson came there multiple times. She says he pushed her and caused problems. Neighbors called the police. He was removed from the house. Her sister did not want him there anymore. Gonzalez says she broke up with him, but the next day she got back with him. She says she felt sorry for him. Her sister refused to let him stay. So Gonzalez chose to leave with him. They ended up living in the car. Judge reacts. She says that was very poor judgment. Gonzalez agrees. Judge moves forward. She asks about the car sale. She asks Henderson if he sold the car. He says no. He says he would never sell it for $1,500. He says the car is worth much more. Judge asks Gonzalez if she has proof. She says yes. She presents a bill of sale. Judge examines the document. She asks Henderson if the signature is his. He says no. Judge looks closer. Then she notices something. She looks at Gonzalez and says there's a problem. She says the name on the document is spelled wrong. Gonzalez disagrees. She says it is not wrong. She says it is just how he writes. Henderson denies everything. He says we did not sign it. He says nobody forged it. Gonzalez insists it is real. She says the DMV accepted it. She says she did not fake anything. Judge now turns serious. She says this case depends on who she believes. She says there is no clear proof of payment. She asks Gonzalez where the $1,500 came from. Gonzalez tries to explain. She says Henderson planned everything. She says he gave her the car on one date, but wrote a later date on the paper. She says he did that so he could take the car back before she registered it. She says he took her money and the car. Judge carefully reviews the paper again. She compares it with other writing. She asks for letters written by Henderson. Gonzalez provides them. Judge starts comparing handwriting. She notices similarities. She looks at Henderson again. Now his story starts to change. He says he wrote something like that, but not a real bill of sale. He says it was just a paper so she could drive the car. Judge stops him. She says he already admitted writing it. He tries to take it back. He says he did not write that exact document. Judge does not accept that. She says the handwriting matches. She says the signature style matches. She says the way he writes her name also matches. She concludes he wrote it. Henderson still denies. Judge reads the document out loud. It clearly states the car is given to Gonzalez. It includes the car details and price, $1,500. Judge makes her decision. She says she believes Gonzalez. She says Henderson sold the car. She awards Gonzalez $1,500. Case closed. Next case is called Coleman versus Goins. Judge looks at both women. She confirms they are sisters. They both say yes. Judge says she has read the complaint and the answer. She starts explaining the situation. Coleman says she bought a bicycle for her sister's husband. He asked her to buy it. He promised he would pay for it. She says her sister also said she would cover the payment if needed. So she bought the bike. The price was $150, but she never got paid. Judge turns to Goins. Goins says she never agreed to pay for the bike. She says she told her clearly not to buy it. She says if she still bought it, that was her own decision. Now the argument begins. They start blaming each other. Judge raises her hand and stops them. She wants facts only. She asks what happened after the bike was bought. Coleman says she tried to get her money, but they kept delaying. Then one day she went to their house to get the bike back. She says they refused to give it. Goins responds. She says Coleman came angry. She says she was shouting outside the house. She says she kept banging on the window. Judge focuses on that moment. She asks Coleman what happened. Coleman explains. She says she went there to take the bike. She says they made her wait. She even drove her sister around to run errands. Later, when she came back, they refused to open the door. She says the husband ignored her. She says the door was shut in her face. She says she got upset. She knocked on the window. The window broke. She says her hand was badly injured. She says she cut an artery and a tendon. She says there was a lot of blood. Goins says it was her own fault. She says Coleman was acting out of control. She says she kept banging again and again. Judge does not focus on blame. She focuses on the main issue. She says the injury is serious. She says as a sister, Goins should have cared more. Then she asks about the bicycle. She asks the husband to step forward. He comes forward. Judge asks him directly, "Did you ask her to buy the bike?" He says yes. "Did you receive the bike?" He says yes. "Do you still have it?" He says yes. The judge gives a simple conclusion. Then you have to pay for it. The husband says he planned to pay. He says he gets paid every 2 weeks. He says he asked her to wait, but she did not wait. Coleman says he never paid anything. The husband claims he gave $50 as a down payment. Coleman denies it. Judge asks for proof. There is no clear proof of any payment. Judge decides based on facts. The bike was bought by Coleman. The bike is still with them. No full payment was made. She gives her judgment. They must pay $150 for the bike. Goines asks about the broken window. Judge answers clearly. That is not part of this case. She ends the case. Case closed. 3 cases, 3 different stories, but one common pattern: bad decisions, toxic relationships, and real consequences. Judge Judy looks at these situations the same way every time. She does not focus on emotions first. She focuses on responsibility. In the first case, a relationship turned violent. 2 people stayed together even when things were clearly broken. There were fights, drugs, and children in the middle of it all. Both made mistakes. But one moment changed everything: an assault. That moment brought the law into their lives. The judge made it clear: love is not an excuse for violence, and children should never grow up in chaos. In the second case, the situation was different, but the problem was the same: poor judgment, living in a car, trusting someone who already showed signs of trouble. Gonzalez believed Henderson. She trusted him enough to buy the car. But there was no strong proof, no clear record of money. Everything depended on words. And in court, words are not always enough. Still, the truth came out through small details: handwriting, behavior, changing statements. The judge saw through it and made a decision based on logic. In the third case, it was not about love. It was about family. 2 sisters, once close, helping each other, taking care of each other's children. But slowly, small problems turned into big fights. Money became the issue. A simple bicycle turned into a serious conflict. Arguments turned into anger. Anger turned into injury. A broken window, a damaged relationship, all over $150. Judge Judy always brings things back to basics. Who is responsible? Who made the decision? Who caused the damage? She does not get distracted by shouting or emotions. She listens. She watches. She connects the facts. In every case, there's a lesson. Do not ignore warning signs. Do not stay in toxic situations. Do not mix money with unstable relationships. And most important of all, think before you act. Because once things go wrong, you cannot take them back. These are not just court cases. These are real lives, real mistakes, and real consequences. Every courtroom, there is more than just a case. There are choices, and every choice leads to a result. Judge Judy has seen thousands of cases, different people, different stories, but the same mistakes repeat again and again. People ignore red flags. People trust the wrong person. People act in anger, and later, they pay the price. In the first case, the warning signs were clear: fighting, breaking up, getting back together, again and again. That cycle never leads to peace. It only gets worse. Butler knew things were not right. Still, she went back. Not once. More than once. She believed promises. She believed change would come. But nothing changed. Instead, things became more dangerous. Until one night, everything went too far. Torres also made his choices. He let anger control him. He turned a fight into violence. One moment of anger, and now he faces jail time, a criminal record, and financial responsibility. That one decision changed his life. Then there are the children. They did not choose any of this, but they were there, watching, listening, learning. Judge Judy made that very clear. Children remember everything, and what they see at home shapes their future. In the second case, the problem was trust. Gonzalez trusted someone who already showed bad behavior. She knew there were issues. She knew there was conflict. Still, she stayed. Still, she believed living in a car was already a sign. But she continued. Then came the money. $1,000, a big, with no proof, no safety, just trust. And that trust broke. Henderson tried to deny everything. He changed his story. Step by step, But small details exposed the truth. The way he wrote, the way he spoke, the way his story kept changing. In court, consistency matters, and he lost that. In the third case, the problem was pride. Two sisters. Both felt they were right. Both refused to step back. What could have been solved with one calm conversation turned into a public argument, then into damage, then into court. The husband knew he had the bike. He knew he had to pay. But delay and excuses made things worse. And once emotions got involved, everything escalated. Judge Judy always keeps it simple. If you take something, you pay for it. If you hurt someone, you are responsible. If you make bad choices, you face the consequences. These cases may look different, but they all follow the same rule. Actions have consequences. Some people learn early. Some learn the hard way. In court, in front of everyone, is not just about law. It is about truth. And truth comes out under pressure. Judge Judy does not rush. She listens. She watches how people speak, how they react, how their stories change. Because truth stays consistent. Lies do not. In the first case, Torres tried to explain. He tried to reduce what happened. He said it was a fight. He said she started it. But one fact stayed the same. He admitted he hit her. That was enough. Everything else became secondary. Butler also made mistakes. She stayed in a harmful situation. She ignored the warning signs. She chose emotions over safety. But that does not justify violence. Judge Judy made that clear. There is never an excuse for assault. In the second case, the turning point was small. One detail. A name written incorrectly. That was enough to raise doubt. From there, everything started to fall apart. Henderson tried to deny the document. Then he partially admitted. Then he changed his statement again. That is how credibility breaks. One inconsistency leads to another, until nothing sounds believable. Judge Judy did not need long speeches. She only needed facts. And once she connected them, the decision was clear. In the third case, emotions took control. Both sisters were angry. Both felt disrespected. But anger does not solve problems. It creates new ones. A simple deal became a fight. A fight became damage. And damage brought them to court, all over something small. The husband tried to explain delays. He talked about timing. He talked about payment plans. But the basic truth did not change. He had the bike. He did not pay. That is all that mattered. Judge Judy focuses on simple logic, not excuses, not emotions, just facts. Across all cases, one pattern stands out. People make decisions in the moment, without thinking about the result. They react, they argue, they act on emotion, and later, they regret it. But by then, it is too late. The damage is done. The case is in court, and the decision is out of their hands. That is the reality. Once you lose control, someone else decides your outcome. Now everything comes down to one thing: consequences. In the first case, the outcome is serious. Torres is going to jail. 180 days. That is not just time. That is a permanent mark on his record. One moment of anger led to that. He also has to pay $2,500. Not because of a mistake, but because of harm. Real harm. Physical damage. Emotional damage. And the law holds him responsible. But the bigger impact is not money. It is the effect on the children. They saw the fights. They felt the fear. That kind of environment leaves a mark, and it does not go away easily. In the second case, the consequence is financial. $1,500. That is what Henderson has to pay. Because the truth showed he took both the money and the car. He tried to deny it. He tried to change his story. But facts do not change. Once the judge sees the pattern, the outcome becomes clear. Trust without proof is risky. That is the lesson. If money is involved, there must be proof. Clear, simple, written. In the third case, the result is smaller. $150. But the damage is bigger than the money. Two sisters, a broken relationship, a fight that could have been avoided. The court solved the money issue, but it cannot fix the relationship. That part is already damaged. Judge Judy always brings clarity. She cuts through confusion. She removes emotions from the decision, and she focuses on responsibility. Each case ends the same way. A decision is made. The parties leave, but the lessons stay. Violence leads to punishment. Dishonesty leads to loss. Pride leads to conflict. And all of it can be avoided with better choices. Think before you react. Stay away from toxic situations. Keep your decisions clear and smart. Because once things go to court, you lose control. Every case ends in court. But every problem starts much earlier. In the first case, it did not start with violence. It started with small arguments, disrespect, ignoring warning signs, going back again and again, each time thinking it will be better. But it never was. In the second case, it did not start with money. It started with trust. Trust without proof. Trust without thinking. And when that trust broke, everything collapsed. In the third case, it did not start with a bicycle. It started with tension, old issues, unspoken problems. The bike was just the trigger. That is how most problems grow. Slowly, quietly, until one moment changes everything. Judge Judy sees this every day. Different people, same patterns. People think their situation is unique, but the mistakes are often the same. It's choosing the wrong person, ignoring reality, reacting with anger, refusing to step back. And then comes the courtroom, where everything is exposed. No hiding, no excuses, just facts. In court, emotions do not win. Stories do not win. Proof wins. Truth wins. And sometimes the truth is simple. You were wrong. You made a bad decision. And now you have to pay for it. That is the hard part. Accepting responsibility. Some people learn from it. Some people repeat it. The choice is always theirs. But one thing is certain. Every action has a result, good or bad. And once that result arrives, there is no going back. This is where it all ends. Not just the cases, the lessons. 3 different stories, 3 different people, but one clear truth. Your choices decide your outcome. In the first case, emotions controlled everything. Love turned into anger. Anger turned into violence. And violence led to jail. In the second case, trust replaced logic. No proof, no protection, just belief. And that belief turned into loss. In the third case, pride destroyed peace. A small issue became a big fight, and a family bond was broken. None of these situations happened in one moment. They built over time, step by step, bad decision after bad decision. And that is how most problems grow. Not suddenly, but slowly, until it is too late. Judge Judy does not create the outcome. She reveals it. She looks at the facts, and the truth becomes clear. If you take something, you pay for it. If you hurt someone, you are responsible. If you lie, it will be exposed. Simple rules. But people ignore them. The courtroom is the final stop, where everything is decided. But by then, the damage is already done. So the real question is not what happens in court. The real question is what happens before. The choices you make, the people you trust, the way you react, that is what decides everything. Because once you lose control, someone else will decide your future.